The 18th century opened with a war for the control over the vast Spanish Empire. This war pitted two great powers in Europe. In this war, Louis XIV of France thought he could take on the rest of the Europe, and with his grandson at the throne of the Spain and its territories, he thought he could practically rule the world. But he did not realize he had sabotaged himself almost 20 years ago. What did he do? We will find out. Now, let's turn back time a little, to 1683. This was a time when everyone was busy adjusting to the life at Versailles, which became the new capital. A young man came to see Louis XIV. Louis knew this young man quite well. He was the son of the Count of Soissons, Eugene Maurice, and his name was François Eugene, or simply, Eugene. His mother was the famous Olympia Mancini, one of the Mazarinette. So Eugene had grown up in the palace since childhood. Just before his 20th birthday, he approached Louis and requested a position as a junior officer in the royal army, saying that he wished to serve in the French military. This was a surprise, not only to Louis, but even to his own family. Eugene had been studying to become a clergyman. He had a very small and frail physique, so no one thought he had the build for a successful soldier. He wasn't particularly good-looking. The Duchess of Orleans, Liselotte, wrote about him in her memoirs. His eyes weren't particularly bad, but his nose ruined everything. She also wrote, when he opens his mouth, his two large teeth are all you can see. Although he was studying to become a clergyman, he was also known to have led a life of debauchery. There were rumors about his wild behavior, which wasn't much of a secret. So, to anyone who saw him, he didn't appear to be someone capable of accomplishing great things. From King Louis's perspective, there was nothing about Eugene that appealed to him. First of all, Eugene was too small for a soldier, and Louis, who placed great value on appearances, found his looks unappealing. But there was another reason. His mother was the Countess of Soissons. As we have seen in the earlier videos, the Countess of Soissons had quite the reputation. She was deeply implicated in numerous deaths relating to the affair of the poison scandal, that she was even called a master of poison. After her exile from France in 1680, suspicions arose about her late husband, who had died years earlier. He had been in perfect health, but suddenly died of fever. No one had taken notice at the time, but, now that the affair of the poison scandal had come to light, people suspected that the Count of Soissons might have also been poisoned. King Louis was still angry at Olympia's involvement in the scandal, so when her son, Eugene, requested to become a soldier, Louis had no intention of granting his wish. He coldly refused him, and later, he reportedly said to those around him, "The request was polite enough, but the boy was not. No one else ever presumed to stare me out so insolently while making a petition." Anyway, with Louis' cold rejection, any chance Eugene had of securing a position in France vanished. He spent some time in despair, but eventually, he made a decision. If France won't have me, I will look for a position elsewhere. And so, with tears in his eyes, he crossed the Rhine River. Eugene resolved at that moment, I will never return to France empty-handed. When I return, there will be a weapon in my hand. In August of 1683, Eugene sought audience with the Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold I. Eugene had to travel not to Vienna, but to Passau to meet Leopold. At the time, Vienna was under siege by the massive Ottoman army, and was on the brink of falling. The emperor had just barely managed to escape to the fortress at Passau, before the city was fully surrounded, so Leopold was in no position to be choosy. He was more than happy to receive anyone willing to fight for him. Noblemen like Eugene, who could serve as cavalry officers, were especially welcomed. And it didn't hurt that Eugene had ties to the House of Savoy. Unlike Louis XIV, who found fault with Eugene's appearance, Leopold couldn't care less. After all, Leopold himself was famously considered one of the ugliest emperors in history. But he was not self-conscious about his looks at all, and he didn't care about the appearances of others either. So Leopold gladly accepted Eugene's service, and granted him a position as a cavalry officer. After his bitter disappointment with Louis XIV, Eugene's gratitude toward Leopold was that much stronger. He swore to Leopold, "I will devote all my strength, all my courage, and if need be, my last drop of blood, to the service of your imperial majesty." And so it was that Eugene began his military career as a junior officer in the emperor's army. Eugene's grand declaration notwithstanding, Leopold wasn't expecting much from Eugene. Eugene had no combat experience, and didn't exactly look the part of a distinguished soldier. Leopold just hoped he would fight hard enough to carry his own weight. The war at the time was known as the Great Turkish War, where the Hapsburgs fought with all their might against the Ottoman Empire. Although the Ottomans weren't as fearsome as they had been during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century, they still controlled vast territories and remained a formidable power. And, in this war, Eugene quickly distinguished himself. He initially served under the Margrave of Baden, and proved himself to be a fearless and brilliant cavalry officer. He was known for two key traits, which were reckless bravery and impeccable timing. Eugene would personally lead his men from the front, charging into battle, and this would inspire fierce loyalty of his troops, who would then fight as if they had nothing to lose. His small but tenacious cavalry often shifted the tides of battle. In a battle, momentum is crucial. A single unit with momentum can completely change the course of the war. Eugene's small unit played that role brilliantly. Eugene also carefully observed the enemy's movements to identify their weak points. Charging at an enemy that is prepared would only lead to the deaths of his men, so it's essential to strike at the right timing when the enemy is not ready. Eugene had an exceptional ability to recognize such moments. As a result, he was able to inflict significant damage on the enemy while minimizing his own losses. But how did this young, relatively inexperienced commander achieve such success? Certainly, Eugene possessed natural gifts of fearlessness and an uncanny ability to read the battlefield. But there was more to his success. Before his military career, Eugene's family decided that he would join the clergy. His reckless lifestyle might have been a calculated move against this plan, to show that he is unfit for the life of a priest. Yet, Eugene was not a mindless rebel. He was a voracious reader, especially of military history. Plutarch's lives and countless war chronicles filled his mind with strategies and tactics long before he ever set foot on the battlefield. Even in the midst of war, Eugene was known to keep books in his tent, reading whenever time allowed. His scholarly approach undoubtedly contributed to his battlefield successes, allowing him to outsmart his enemies. Eugene's reputation soon spread. The Duke of Lorraine personally commended him, and reports of his valor reached the emperor himself. Leopold awarded Eugene with a commendation and rapidly promoted him through the ranks. Eugene's career trajectory had a meteoric rise, and by the age of 22, he had become a general. In 1688, the war front shifted once again. France invaded the Rhineland, trying to capitalize on the conflict between Austria and the Ottoman Empire. In this war, known as the 9 Years' War, Louis XIV ostensibly claimed the succession rights to Pfalz on behalf of his sister-in-law, Liselotte, and her children and invaded Heidelberg. This new war forced Leopold to divide his forces between fighting France and the Ottomans. Though the Ottomans had been on the brink of collapse, they managed to catch their breath, thanks to the French intervention. Eugene, now stationed in northern Italy, found himself facing the French, who were far more disciplined and formidable than the Ottomans. The war dragged on, with Eugene facing numerous challenges, including logistical struggles and a lack of resources. Despite his tireless efforts, victory was eluding him. Frustrated, Eugene sent a letter to the emperor, bluntly describing the chaos and incompetence he had witnessed on the northern Italian front. He was not one to be mincing words. The letter even criticized the imperial commander, the Count of Carafa, for his ineptitude. His candid words stirred controversy in Vienna, with some officials demanding his removal for his audacity. Yet, Leopold saw something different in Eugene. He saw a fearless and honest young man. Reading Eugene's letter, Leopold felt like he was blinded by the layers of command structure, and did not know what was happening in the front line. Yet this young man dug up the courage to tell him bluntly, so rather than dismissing him, Leopold promoted him to replace the commander. By 1697, Eugene had become the supreme commander of the Hapsburg forces. By this time, the Ottoman Empire had regained much of its strength, and sought to recover its lost territories. The Ottomans advanced from Belgrade. Emperor Leopold was concerned, so, even though he had given the command of the army to Eugene, he ordered, "Since we don't yet know the size of the enemy, if their forces are larger than ours, do not engage recklessly, but focus only on defense." Eugene had about 16,000 cavalry under his command, and even when gathering all available forces, they numbered fewer than 50,000. In contrast, the Ottoman forces, led by the rebellious Hungarian leader Tekeli, numbered between 75,000 and 100,000. According to the emperor's orders, Eugene should have holed up in a fortress and focused on defense. But when Eugene assessed the enemy's movements, he saw that they were marching along the river, seemingly heading toward Transylvania. To get there, they would have to cross the river. Eugene concluded this was a crucial opportunity to strike. He quickly moved his troops to pursue the Ottomans. His prediction was correct. The Ottomans were preparing to cross the river at a small bridge. This put them in a perilous position, trapped between the river in front and the enemy behind them. The Ottomans had not expected Eugene's forces to arrive so quickly. After a long march that started in the morning, Eugene finally caught up with the enemy. He ordered a brief rest and waited for nightfall. As dusk settled, Eugene gave the order to attack. He deployed his cavalry on both flanks, and positioned his infantry in the center, forming a crescent shape to encircle the enemy. The surprise attack threw the Ottomans into panic. So many of them rushed onto the bridge at once, and the bridge collapsed. Thousands drowned in the river. It's said that more than 30,000 Ottomans, including key officials accompanying the Sultan, perished in this battle. In contrast, Eugene's forces suffered only 429 casualties. The Ottoman Grand Vizier, who had advocated for this war, was killed in a rebellion soon after. This was a significant victory. It led to the signing of the Treaty of Karlowitz between the Habsburgs and the Ottoman Empire. The Habsburgs gained vast territories in the northern Balkans, and the Ottomans gave up all hope of reclaiming Hungary, losing any ambitions for the Balkans as well. And after this battle, Eugene's reputation spread throughout Europe. One can only imagine what King Louis must have thought as he watched these events unfold. He could have had this brilliant general for France, but it was too late. And now, Eugene of Savoy, the very person Louis rejected, is the general of the Holy Roman Empire fighting against French forces in this War of Spanish Succession, as French forces were trying to deal a decisive blow to Austria by capturing Vienna. So, with the forces from both sides converging into Vienna, what will happen? And how will Eugene exact his revenge on Louis XIV? We will tell you all the details in our next video, so please like and subscribe to continue receiving the stories from history. It really helps a small channel like us.